Spring practice has come to an end, and that means that the transfer portal is wide open. And this week we started seeing some Georgia players hop into the portal, and we also saw some players hopping out of the portal and joining the Georgia football team. So let's take a look at what's going on. First person to jump in the portal was running back Branson Robinson. You know, this is a guy who came in and had tons of potential. He was the number one or number two back in the country in the class of 2024 out of Mississippi. And he really showed some promise during that 2022 national championship season. He was the number 4 tailback, you know, in the rotation that year. Georgia was pretty deep. They had, you know, Kenny McIntosh, Dijon Edwards, and Kendall Milton. So he didn't get a lot of opportunity that year, but he did get to step in a couple of games and really show what he had, particularly against Auburn. He had a really, really nice game against Auburn, just 12 carries, but went for 98 yards and a touchdown. And then in the national championship game against TCU, he got a chance to shine there in the fourth quarter, kind of after the curtain call had taken place and a lot of the starters had left the game. Branson Robinson came in there with the with the second stringers and the third stringers and really showed out. Had a couple of nice runs, ended up with 42 yards and 2 touchdowns. So kind of a shame to see him go. Obviously, the problem for Branson was he just couldn't stay healthy. He got hurt in the offseason in 2023, missed the entire 2023 season, was back and seemed like he was healthy coming into 2024. But when you saw him out there in the first game of the season last year against Clemson, he just didn't look like the same guy that we had seen during the 2022 season. The burst wasn't there. The speed wasn't there. And maybe it was just going to take him, you know, a couple of games to kind of get back to game speed after being out for, you know, over a year. But unfortunately, in the Mississippi State game, he hurt his knee again and ended up not taking another carry the rest of the season. It's a shame because this was a guy that, you know, had a lot of potential, but he just couldn't stay healthy. And I think he kind of read what was going on. Nathan Frazier was stepping into the lead back this year. And just a couple of bad injuries maybe just signal time for him that he needed to move on and maybe get a fresh start somewhere else. So good luck to Branson Robinson. You know, Dog Nation will always be proud of what he accomplished while he was at Georgia, and we wish him the best. The next two guys who jumped in the portal, they're a little bit different of a story. So Georgia much maligned for its problems with driving issues, and we had two guys who in the same week actually got in trouble for driving issues. We'll start out right there at the top with Nitro Tuggle. This is a guy that obviously here on this show we love and saw a lot of potential out of him. He got a little bit of playing time, you know, last year. After the season, initially jumped into the portal in the fall, but pulled back. I think the coaches had kind of talked him off the ledge and said, hey, you know, we've got a place for you in the offense next year. But he got this reckless driving charge. And, you know, with all the pressure from outside, everybody yelling, Kirby made the decision to suspend him. And once he was suspended, I think a lot of us kind of saw the writing on the wall. He started posting videos on his social media accounts of him working out by himself at the intramural fields. And you kind of knew he remained suspended throughout all of spring and was away from the program. So he enters the transfer portal, not surprising. It sucks because I think he is a guy that could be a contributor and one day, you know, be a pretty good receiver. But once again, we wish him luck. The next guy was another guy who got in trouble for a driving issue. Offensive tackle Marquise Easley. He redshirted last year. He appeared in 2 games. He was lower on the depth chart, expected to be a backup this year. And I guess kind of the same thing, you know, after the suspension and missing all spring, maybe he just saw the writing on the wall that he was probably going to be passed by incoming freshmen or other guys who hadn't gotten in trouble. So he made the decision to leave in the transfer portal. And then the newest one is today. A word came down that defensive back Chris Peel is entering the transfer portal. He's a rising redshirt sophomore. Played a little bit of corner, a little bit of safety. He was a 4-star in the 2023 class, the number 25 overall cornerback. Really didn't play much in his first 2 years in Georgia. Appeared in 1 game during his redshirt year in 2023 and appeared in 4 games last year. He totaled 2 tackles across those 5 games. And, you know, the defensive backfield is kind of in flux this year. And I guess he felt that there wasn't a place for him to move up with the guys that are out there. So as of today, after Peel entered the transfer portal today, 13 of Georgia's 26 class of 2023 signings have entered the portal or transferred at this point. So it's just part of that changing face of college football. Overall for Georgia, in addition to these 4 guys, there's also been 4 walk-ons who have entered the portal, most notably Luke Bennett, younger brother of Stetson Bennett. I saw that he caught a pass in the G-Day game, so, maybe he's trying to follow in his brother's footsteps, maybe go somewhere else, find a little bit of playing time, and then maybe transfer back. You never know. So just as the portal sometimes takes away guys, the portal also gives. And Georgia got news on Easter Sunday that we had 3 new guys committed that are going to be coming on campus. So the first incoming transfer we have is running back Josh McCray, senior running back from Illinois. Big bruising type back, had just a little over 600 yards rushing last year, 10 touchdowns, averaging about 6 yards a carry. Wasn't necessarily the lead back at Illinois last year, but got his chance late in the season. Had a really good game against South Carolina in the Citrus Bowl, rushed for 114 yards and 2 touchdowns on just 13 carries, and was named the game's MVP. So a big bruising back, a chance to come in, really add some depth in the Georgia backfield, particularly with Branson Robinson transferring out. Roger Robinson's health kind of still being up in the air. It'll be good to have an experienced back there with Nathan Frazier and with the young guys that we've got on the team. So good pickup for Georgia there to help out on the offensive side of the ball. The second player that Georgia picked up out of the transfer portal is edge Elo Madozi from Army. You heard that right. A service academy guy is transferring to Georgia. And he was one of the highly sought after prospects in the country. Out of high school, he was originally a wide receiver safety player, but in the last couple of years, he grew 3 inches. He put on 35 pounds of weight and has turned into a really good defensive end edge type prospect. Should definitely help fill in spots left off by, the guys that left on the defensive line, both in the draft and through the transfer portal, including Damon Wilson. And just based on what the defense that Army ran last year, it was kind of in similar style to Georgia. So you look at his numbers and you see 6.5 sacks. You think, oh, that's not great. But considering that in the style of offense defense that Georgia runs, our top guys that are these high, prospects, Nolan Smith, Jalen Walker, these guys only put up, 5.5, 6.5 sacks a season. So in that same type of defense, this guy has a potential to come in, step in, and get a lot of playing time for Georgia. So kind of an exciting pickup there. The third guy that Georgia picked up was defensive lineman Josh Horton from Miami. A guy from the state of Georgia, 4-star player in the class of 2023. Hasn't played much, still, very young in his career, but he adds some depth that will help with, those losses we had along the lines of Warren Brinson, Nazir Stackhouse, and Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. So good pickups for Georgia, filling in some spots of need coming into, summer practice and then getting ready for the fall. All right. And before I move on, I just want to take a second to thank you for tuning into the show. Please remember to like, subscribe, and leave us a comment. This really helps us grow the channel, and we really appreciate all the people who have been checking us out over the last few weeks. I wanted to announce that we did have a winner in our giveaway contest, and I reached out to the winner today and got their cards in the mail. So be keeping an eye out. You never know when we'll have another contest and give something else away. In addition to our weekly podcast, be on the lookout for a new video coming out from us later this week. This will be our first in a series of videos we're planning to do on the history of Georgia football. This week, we take a look at the timeline of the downfall of Mark Richt as the coach at Georgia. So be looking out for it. Give us a like, leave us some comments and opinions on us, and let us know what other topics you'd like to see us cover. All right, so we've covered the transfer portal from the Georgia perspective, but now let's move on and talk a little bit about the country's favorite topic over the last week, the Nico saga. Nico transferred from Tennessee, and he went looking for money. And when he got out there in the portal, he found out that maybe his people had kind of overshot and there wasn't the market that he thought was going to be there. After some discussion with a number of teams, including North Carolina, who ended up offering and taking a transfer quarterback from South Alabama, it looks like Nico is headed to UCLA. So don't know what his final figure is, but with California taxes and cost of living, the dollar certainly doesn't go as far in Los Angeles, California as it does in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'll tell you that much. So he ends up going to UCLA. Now, the funny part of that whole situation was that with him transferring in, UCLA had taken a transfer quarterback in the portal during the first portal window to come in and potentially be their starter in 2025. Well, that player is Joey Aguilar, and he is now transferring to Tennessee. So I guess you could maybe call this the first trade of the NIL era in college football. UCLA got Nico to play quarterback, and now Tennessee has got Joey Aguilar to come in and play for them. Let's talk a little bit about Joey Aguilar. He had transferred to UCLA from App State. He'd been the starter over there for the last couple of years. In 2023, he put up great numbers. He threw for 3,700 yards, 63% completion, 33 touchdowns. He did have 10 INTs, but not horrible numbers. 2024 was a little more of a struggle for him. His completion percentage dropped to 55%. His yardage total dropped to 3,000. Still had 23 touchdowns, solid number, but his picks rose to 14. So we'll see what happens. I guess he's going to come in and compete for the job there. And we'll see who ends up winning this trade in the end. With Nico transferring to UCLA, his brother, who is currently or was currently at Arkansas, has announced that he also was going into the transfer portal and transferring to UCLA. So there's some news today that the Arkansas collective kind of put out a statement that said that they're going to go after prospects who don't honor their agreements. So it sounds like they may be setting up some type of lawsuit to get some money back from the family who decided to pull their son and move him to UCLA. The other joke was that they wanted to get him out of there before Arkansas travels to Tennessee, a couple weeks into the season, because they knew that it was just not going to be a pretty scene walking into Neyland Stadium with the younger brother of a guy that they consider to be a pretty bad guy at this point. And now we've reached the end of April, and this year that means it's time for the NFL draft. As per most every season since Kirby Smart has been the coach at Georgia, Georgia has a lot of prospects that are looking to get their name called starting on Thursday night, but on into the weekend. This draft is highlighted by some big names, guys that are expecting to be drafted up there at the top. You've got names like Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Ashton Genty. I really feel like in this draft, you've kind of got a wide variety of positions. It's not just a quarterback-driven draft. Obviously, Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders are kind of your tops up there. You got a guy like Jackson Dart as well. Travis Hunter was a super interesting prospect, both as a receiver and as a defensive back. He stated, his desire to play both ways once he gets in the pros. So we'll see what happens there. Abdul Carter, fantastic defensive prospect out of Penn State. And, of course, Ashton Genty, an amazing running back. Running backs don't go as high as they used to. But he's one of those guys I think that may be worthy and may get drafted, in the first round. So we'll see what happens there. Just in terms of the projections, there's lots of mock drafts that you can pick from: ESPN, Pro Football Focus, The Athletic, amongst others. ESPN released their latest mock draft. And so I was just taking a look at kind of what we're looking at in terms of projected number of picks per some of the top teams in the nation. Right there at the top is Ohio State. They're predicted to have 15 guys drafted in the ESPN mock. That would tie the all-time record set by Georgia back in 2022 when they had 15 guys selected. Texas, your other team from the SEC that was in the, that went kind of far in the playoffs, they're projected to have 11 picks. Ole Miss, with that great transfer portal defense, they're projected for 9 picks. Michigan, coming off a national championship, having a disappointing year, but still really had some strong prospects. They're projected for 8 picks. And even old stalwart Alabama, who's generally up there in the top, kind of off a disappointing year for them. They're projected to have 7 picks. As for Georgia, they set the single season record with 15 players drafted back in 2022, but they haven't really slowed down since then. In the last 5 years, they've had 49 players drafted. That's just absolutely nuts. But it's really not going to slow down this year. Georgia had 14 players that were invited to the NFL Combine. And personally, I think that should have been at least 15, if not 16. Dan Jackson and Chaz Chambliss both did not receive invites to Indy for the Combine. And Chaz Chambliss, you can maybe understand, he's been a 3 or 4 year contributor at Georgia, but some of the eyeball test just doesn't fit up as a high level prospect. But the guy that I'm disappointed that I felt really should have been invited to the Combine was Dan Jackson. Dan Jackson was maybe the best player on Georgia's defense last year. He made so many plays and he contributed so much over the last few years. I think he still gets knocked because he was a walk-on coming out of high school, but this is a guy who was a solid contributor on 2 national championship teams and was a 3-year starter really with Georgia. I don't know. Not inviting him to the Combine seems weird to me. He's a guy that I think will definitely be drafted. And I think he's going to make some people regret that, they overlooked him, because to me, he made so many plays last year. That's just a guy I want on my team. But as for the projections, ESPN's full 7-round mock projected 13 Georgia players taken. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take a look at all the players that Georgia has as potential draftees. That's 17 guys in all. And we'll just kind of run through, and I'll give you my prediction on where I think they go. And I'm not going to be predicting on which team takes them or which pick. I'm just going to be predicting which round they go in. I'm not a crazy NFL draft guy. I don't know everybody from every team. So trying to predict which team takes what is way beyond my pay grade. But I will let you think where which round I think everybody is going to go. So let's start right at the top. I think there's going to be 3 Georgia players taken in the first round. That's pretty consistent across most mock drafts. The first guy off the board is going to be probably Jalen Walker, the Butkus Award winner, just a fantastic player for Georgia. Made so many good plays last year, had great games against Texas, just an awesome dude. And I think he's going to make another NFL team happy, just like some of these teams that have drafted Georgia players in recent years have been really happy with the quality of player that they've gotten at the linebacker position. Second guy off the board is probably going to be Mykel Williams, projected in that ESPN mock at number 10. Another great player with really high upside. Battled injuries, especially the last couple of years, but there's just something about him, that with the right situation, he's one of those guys that could get to a situation where they really feature him more and really put up some big numbers that kind of didn't, just based on the system that they were running at Georgia. Third guy is Malachi Starks. Right now he's projected at number 20. He's a safety, and safety always seems like a weird position because it seems like one of those spots where guys slide sometimes. They're not as flashy as corners or receivers. So he's projected at 26. I don't think he falls out of the first round, simply because sitting at number 30 is the Eagles, and they have said that they have met with them, and their propensity for drafting Georgia players in recent years. You got to think defending Super Bowl champs with a chance to get a player with the freakish ability of Malachi Starks, that might be too much to pass up. So I think he goes in the first round. I would be surprised if still available at 30 for the Eagles that they don't take him. So moving on outside of the first round, I'm going to continue to go through this in terms of where I think they might go. So the next guy we're going to take a look at is Tate Ratledge, offensive guard. Had a really good career for Georgia. Missed a lot of that 2021 season. Came back last year for his senior year. Was an anchor. Was an All-American. Just a huge guy who put up some awesome numbers for a guy his size at the Combine. I think most of the projections have him going somewhere in the third round, but I think he's a guy with experience and some really, really good numbers at the combine. So he's a guy I could see maybe slipping into that second round. Definitely will probably be gone by the third round. So late second, early third round is where I think Tate Ratledge will probably go. The next guy I'm looking at is probably center Jared Wilson. Another guy who's just crazy athletic for the position that he plays. And I think that will impress a lot of people. Sometimes centers, for whatever reason, fall in the draft and they're not as valued as much as tackles and guards are, but you just don't see freaks like that playing center. So I think somebody will fall in love with him. The projections are in the third round for him. Once again, centers sometimes kind of fall, and it's weird. Why was David Andrews an undrafted free agent? I have no idea. I'm projecting him probably late third, early fourth round. Just another good player. Next one, running back Trevor Etienne, projected in the fourth round. I think that's probably about right for him. Prior to his career at Georgia, he was a solid running back at Florida. He was a little banged up this year, which really prevented him from reaching, I think, the heights that Georgia fans expected of him coming in. But did have a couple of really solid games, especially those Texas games were his best games of the year. So fourth round sounds about right for a solid running back who, was a multi-year starter in the SEC. Up next after that, we've got offensive guard Dylan Fairchild, projected in the fifth round, but this is a guy that I could see going a little bit higher. Another guy that really, really is a solid player that developed over the years and really got his chance to shine this year in the Georgia offense. Another one of these guys just with, great athletic talent that the NFL seems to like at those offensive line positions. So that's a guy that I think could go a little bit higher. So I think he's going to go in the fourth round, even though the projections have him going in the fifth. After that, we got linebacker Smile Munden. This is a guy who, I think earlier in his Georgia career, people were thinking he could be the next one, one of those guys that's not necessarily a first round pick, but maybe a second round pick. And he was kind of quiet more this year, hurt some, but still a very, very solid player. Projected fourth round pick. I could see him going a little bit later than that. I don't think he jumps off the plate at you and highlights and stuff. Still a very, very solid player. No knock on him. I just think he could be one of those guys that goes a little bit later than is projected. Up next is defensive end Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, a guy that many people were surprised decided to enter the draft. Right now, projected in the fifth round. And this is a guy that was hurt some too, but man, just sometimes he made plays and just jumped out at you. And I think teams are going to see the potential with him. But it could prove to be a mistake, leaving when you have a year left to improve your draft stock to be a fifth round pick. It could be kind of a questionable call. So we'll see what happens with him. I think he'll go somewhere around the early fifth round. Up next after that is Dan Jackson. So I talked about him a little before. I foresee him going in the sixth round, not even the projected seventh round. This is a guy that makes plays, and I really think he could step in to a team and provide solid play back there at safety. I think Dan Jackson goes somewhere in the sixth round. After Dan Jackson, we've got wide receiver Dominic Lovett. And when I was looking through kind of the mock drafts, this was a guy that I was surprised wasn't even in ESPN's projected draft. He was listed as an undrafted free agent, and that surprises me. He's a smaller guy, and just like all the Georgia receivers, this wasn't a great year for him. But if you go back to his sophomore year when he was at Missouri, in that offense where they threw the ball a lot, he was one of the best receivers in the SEC that year. He came over to Georgia, which does not feature its receivers as much as he was featured in that offense at Missouri, but was still a very solid player for Georgia, So for him to be as good as he was and not get drafted, that kind of surprised me. But I was also very surprised when Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint didn't get drafted last year either. So uh, I think he's got the numbers and he's got the pedigree. I think a 6th round sounds about right for me. But the projections have him getting undrafted, so we'll see what happens there. Up next is Warren Brinson, defensive tackle. Spent a lot of time on the field for Georgia. Projected as a 5th round pick. I could see him slipping into the 6th round. Big defensive tackle guys, they don't necessarily have the get you numbers all the time. And I just don't know if he's got enough of that name value to get him up into the 5th round. So 6th round seems about right for him. After that, we've got Nazir Stackhouse, another one of the big defensive tackles from Georgia this year. Projected as a 6th round pick. That's probably about right, somewhere in the 6th, 7th round for Nazir Stackhouse. After that, we've got Arian Smith, wide receiver, much maligned, but you can't deny the freakish abilities. As it was said, numbered many, many times on the broadcast this year, fastest guy on Georgia's team. This year, had to step in and play a lot and be more of a feature receiver in the Georgia offense. But before that in his career, he was kind of that home run hitter, right? He didn't have a lot of catches, but everyone seemed to be a deep ball for a touchdown. Never forget that catch against Ohio State in the Peach Bowl. Freakish speed, really struggled last year with his drops. But then if you saw some of the highlights from the Senior Bowl, he looked really good, making crazy catches. ESPN had him projected in the 6th round. I'm not sure. I think he'll probably go somewhere in the 7th round, but I don't think he'll get to an undrafted free agent, because if he does, somebody will definitely want him just for that speed alone. After that, we've got offensive tackle Xavier Truss. Truss was a guy who played a lot of football for Georgia in a time when they were really good, but man, I just felt like this guy struggled a lot. Like, I always felt like, man, Truss got burned or he got called for a penalty. He just seemed like he made a lot of mistakes, and I know he got a lot of playing time. He's got a lot of experience under his belt, but in terms of the NFL looking at him, I think he's one of these guys that will get a chance to sign on with somebody, but I think he's probably going to go undrafted. ESPN also had him as an undrafted free agent, and that sounds right. Up next is tight end Ben Urosic. Came over from Stanford for the 2024 season, was kind of known as a pass catcher at Stanford. Didn't really get a chance to shine a lot in that role this year at Georgia. Obviously, when you have Oscar Delp and Lawson Lucky already out there, they kind of get a lot of the attention in the pass catching realm. But he actually proved to be a pretty decent blocker by the end of the year. I remember early in the season, he definitely struggled. I think the adjustment to the SEC was a lot, but by the end of the year, he rounded out into a decent blocker in the SEC. He wasn't invited to the combine, and with the lack of stats, last year, probably not one of those guys that's going to get drafted, but he'll get a chance to sign on as an undrafted free agent somewhere. Last guy on the list is Chaz Chambliss. We already talked about him. This is a guy who contributed a lot at Georgia, never complained, had some big sacks in key games, but the eye test, people look at him and say, that guy's not, your prototypical, rush linebacker. I just don't see him getting drafted, but maybe somebody will give him a chance to sign on, see what he can do in the summer in an NFL camp. So I've got him listed as an undrafted free agent, same as the mock draft. So overall, out of the 17 draft prospects that Georgia has coming into the draft, I've got 14 of them drafted. So it wouldn't quite be a record, but it would be another huge, huge draft haul for the Dawgs in the NFL. And it will continue. Come to Georgia, work hard. We'll get you developed. We'll get you to the league, and to not necessarily just pay attention to the NIL money that seems to be ruling a lot of these college kids' decisions right now. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for tonight. Thank you for tuning in for this solo show with me tonight. Be on the lookout for our new video hitting the airwaves later this week. But until then, I'm Street. Go Dawgs.